You know, one of the big, inescapable facts surrounding the biggest political upheavals in a generation is that the political establishment, the crony capitalists, public sector elites, most in the political commentariat never saw it coming. I mean, we were talking about Brexit, didn't see it coming. Syriza's victory in Greece, the Five-Star Movement's victory in Rome election and the Italian referendum, the collapse of Venezuela, the election of Donald Trump, all of it. They never saw any of those major events coming. So it's not difficult to be suspicious of their analysis now about what's coming next. And what's coming next is a very big deal. I mean, one of the major themes on this show is that the demise of the European Union, for example, will be a major catalyst for an up move in the stock market as money pours in from Europe. The anti-establishment movement is the byproduct of the increasing lack of confidence and trust in government, which is the major investment trend driving currencies, bonds, precious metals. So getting what's coming next is important. But before I take any of the political elites seriously in their forecasts, I want to know specifically, what did they learn? I mean, they missed this big one, biggest upheaval in generations, so what have they learned? What adjustments have they made to their approach? Because that's a real key. That's probably the key in the investment markets, by the way. I mean, whenever I get something major wrong, it's time to rethink how I'm doing it. Rethink the methodology, the models that I use. Losing money, by the way, is a very powerful motivator to get real and adjust your approach. Well, I got a lot of people ask me right now if the anti-establishment trend that's reflected in the political change we're seeing is nearly over. And my response is, it's not even close. The reason I say that is while there's finally a little bit of a widespread, or at least at some level, widespread recognition that the so-called populist movements are on the rise, I still don't see much recognition from the political establishment as to why. So hence, they won't make the necessary adjustments. We got a great example this week. Prime Minister Trudeau, in case you missed it, in a speech at an ultra-exclusive black-tie dinner in Hamburg, Germany, the PM stated, in quotes, "Increasing inequality, low wages, and the move to part-time jobs have made citizens distrust their governments and their employers." I say not quite all the list. Mr. Trudeau's solution was even more cliched, by the way. He declared that, in quotes, "It's time to pay a living wage, to pay your taxes, to give your workers the benefits and peace of mind that come with stable full-time contracts," end of quote. Man, I can't read that without shaking my head still. The biggest political upheaval in his adult life, and the best he's got is something so superficial that it should be on the back of a T-shirt, or maybe it's on the box of the Hugo Chavez trading cards. I mean, talk of a living wage, workers getting the benefits, brings up the bogeyman of big bad business. Well, let me offer an alternative explanation for the rise of the anti-establishment movement. Of course, there's going to be a lot of contributing factors, but I'll give you one example that he didn't mention. That is huge. And it's tough to deny that in Europe, for example, the utter naivety and incompetence of the EU's open border policy for refugees has been playing a pivotal role. You look at France, their National Front, leading the polls, Hungary's Freedom Party, Geert Wilders' Party for Freedom in the Netherlands. They've all experienced a big upward swing in popularity over the last 2 years, thanks to their anti-refugee stance. The EU's refugee policy also played a big role, I think, in the Brexit vote. They did not want Brussels to be determining UK's immigration policy or refugee policy. Not quite the same in the US. There you saw massive layoffs in the manufacturing sector collide head-on with a Democratic Party that barely acknowledged them. Well, no poll asked a specific question, but it's still my guess that part of Mr. Trump's support came from people fed up with the arrogance reflected in Hillary Clinton's declaration that Trump supporters were deplorable. That's might be the most honest thing she said in 30 years of public life, and it certainly helped galvanize a lot of support against her. And that leads to a key variable that I don't see on the progressive left's understanding. Millions of people find the constant air of moral superiority of the self-described progressive left tiresome, irksome. I suspect P.J. O'Rourke had more than one person say right on when he said, in quotes, "The principal feature of American liberalism is sanctimoniousness. By loudly denouncing all bad things, war and hunger and date rape, liberals testify their own terrific goodness. More important, they promote themselves to a membership in a self-selecting elite of those who care deeply about such things. It's a kind of natural aristocracy. And the wonderful thing about this aristocracy is that you don't have to be brave, smart, strong, or even lucky to join it. You just have to be liberal." End of quote. As I said, tiresome. By the way, I just read that, and I'm thinking of the Academy Awards. One of the big reasons I will not be watching is because I can't stand the preachiness, of self-serving preachiness of those people. But I think it also led to this. Millions of people prefer the bluntness of Donald Trump to the spin of the political establishment. Don't underestimate that fact. Of course, government elites and those with government connections also played a part, because they made out far better than the average citizen. As I said, there's a lot of variables involved. Millions of people looked at the failure of government, especially in economic terms, where in Europe, for example, they've been stagnating for coming on 10 years, that you've had record unemployment in some countries, really, for half a generation, or at least double-digit unemployment. The government's failure to make the economy better, and that was their promise. Now, you juxtapose that with the perception, well, I think that's actually a reality, that the political class was making out far better. I think that had a lot to do with fueling the anger. It's interesting, when the political establishment warned, and think about this, of the extreme dangers of Brexit, for example, or in Italy, they were warning about the Five-Star Movement and their success in rejecting the Italian referendum, or, of course, with Donald Trump, and it was non-stop, over-the-top rhetoric about hell's coming in a handbasket. Well, a heck of a lot of voters responded with, how can it be worse for me? That was a real key. So, what's next? Well, I think momentum to reject the elites is growing. Egged on by debt problems in Greece, Portugal, Italy, maybe France. You got pension problems at the state and local level.